Hey, how you doing? I want to come to you today and talk about open door policy. Thank you for joining Minority Boss. This is Nate. Just want to briefly talk to you about an experience I had about open door policy. You know, nowadays they tell you, and it's in our employee handbooks, that there's no retaliation if you have a complaint. You can go to your manager. My door is always open. You can come to HR. My door is always open. They try to make that experience as comfortable as possible. Now that sounds good and it looks good on paper, but we know and understand that it's not always that innocent. I remember I had an issue with a boss and I went to the HR office, complained, voicing my concern. And when you do that, they have to investigate the issue. I'm assuming they call the manager and talk to the manager. But even if my complaint was anonymous, I was the only one having an issue with that manager in that department. So after that conversation, the situation got worse. He started treating me much worse. So at that point, I say, oh, it's not good to always go to HR because, they say that retaliation is not permitted. But HR is not going to be there every awakening moment trying to protect us. So I shot myself in the foot. I was naive believing that if I went to HR to complain that I would be protected. That was not the case. I didn't think about all the factors, like I was the only one. Now, if he was treating several others like that, and then I made a complaint or someone made a complaint, then it wouldn't have been like an isolated situation. He wouldn't have known that it was me because you had several others. But that wasn't the case. I was the only one. So what I did eventually was I talked to another manager, an adjacent department about, hey, I got to get out of there. And we knew each other. It was a girl manager because we had worked together in another department. She eventually moved to another department, became a manager. So, and she kind of knew that this boss was kind of like a-hole, if you will. But anyways, to make a long story short, I wound up working with her, transferring out of that department into her department. And that's what I did, and life became so much easier. Not at the current company I'm with right now, but this was with the previous company. So I guess the point of this is HR is not always a protected entity. I think they mean well. Sometimes they try. I don't know if they revised the policy now because I hadn't had to deal with a situation like that in years. So I don't know what it's like right now, but I know before you make a complaint, they would have to investigate. And, we trusted that they kept the information anonymous. But I think a lot of time HR and managers, they have an affinity for each other because they're so close in some cases, and it just doesn't help the situation if you go and complain because they're like buddy buddies in some cases that I've seen. So it's kind of hard for them to reprimand that manager that's causing trouble. So what I did, I just got out of that department and I learned my lesson since. Especially being a minority, I've seen those things. I've heard my minority friends talk about, hey, I went to complain to HR and, they made it seem like it was my fault or they didn't do anything about it. These are some experiences. Not only minority, I've heard some of my Caucasian counterparts say the same, the same thing. So HR is not always, well, I'm not going to say they're not always helpful. Maybe a lot of times they try to be helpful and then making matters worse when they encounter the manager. Because sometimes when you complain on the manager, they get worse and worse. It's like you shooting yourself in the foot. So HR doesn't help in all instances, even though I believe they try. but I think sometimes they make things worse. That was my experience. So what I did was, and going forward, if I have this issue with another manager, I try to talk to the manager first. When we talk about open door policy, we should be able to go to that individual first. And of course, if that doesn't change, we should go to HR. But from my experience, and I don't know, this is not with all companies, so I'm not saying don't go to HR. I'm just saying what I am going to do going forward. If that doesn't work, I either deal with it, or I try to make some type of arrangements to get a transfer to another department. Because I don't want to be considered the person as complaining too. Sometimes you can be perceived as that, even though it's anonymous. But this is a small world, and word gets around. I don't care how anonymous you are. When you go make a complaint, somebody's going to know it's you. And if I transfer it to another department, and I've seen this happen before, oh, that person, you got to watch him. They complain, or they'll snitch on you, or whatever the case is. You know how they do it in the corporate world. But anyways, I want to bring this to you. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. And then I'll see you next week. Thank you.